Vintage vehicles from all over the north of England and Scotland gathered at Carlisle Airport for the annual Hethersgill Vintage Rally, the highlight of the show being the wonderful steam engines. This Marshall general purpose traction engine from 1910 was rebuilt by a local father and son team.
How we come to get this engine was through my dad. This engine was in a barn at Long Preston. It stood in a barn for about 18 years, needing boiler repairs and work done to it. So my dad asked the whereabouts of the engine because he'd seen it previous years at some rallies, and he tracked her down and we tried. It took us about 8 years to buy her, and finally we got her bought, and we brought her up to our workshop, and she stood in our workshop for about 17 years before we decided what to do with it. We took everything apart, and then we got the boiler inspector to come inspect the internal boiler part, which we knew was condemned, but we had to get it on paper to say it was condemned. And then we started from there by stripping every rivet, nut and bolt out, which took us about a month to strip her down. She was used for threshing, wood sowing, general duties round village to village, and farm to farm. Threshing duties was his main work task, and this is classed as a general purpose engine. She's about 11 tonnes full of water. Quite a weight, really. On a general purpose engine, she's 2 speeds, so that's a smaller gearing up to a larger gearing, which is a faster speed. About speed of, I would say, approximately about 6.5 miles an hour, and that is quite fast. You know you're doing it on the road anyhow. This was rubber tired by the previous owner. The reason the rubbering's put on is for a smoother ride, and the bigger steam engines, the road locomotives, they were rubbered for smoothness, because on strakes it was, if you'd done say 7 or 8 miles, you knew you'd quite done a lot of miles in and quite shook up really. But this engine's not sprung. It's classed as what they call a block engine. A lot of engines were sprung for a finer movement and smoother ride, should I say. Steering chain driven by a worm wheel onto a cog through a shaft. All general purpose road-outs, steam engines, steam rollers. There was an odd engine built with slight gearing. They would use different designs in them days. They would keep using, but the most is chain. We start the fire up with a few sticks, and then build it up, slight sprinkling of coal, more coal, and then level out in the firebox, and then gradually keep the fire level and keeping steam. It takes us about an hour before we get a good head of steam.